Let us pray. Oh God, take my lips and speak through them. Take our minds and think through them. Take our hearts and set them on fire for you. Amen. Our theme for Lent is wilderness, and today marks the first Sunday of Lent. 5 more to go before Easter. I wonder, what will the season of wilderness mean for you? Lent started last Wednesday when we smeared ashes on our forehead, admitting that we all die. Ashes, the symbol of death, front and center, right here where everyone who looked at us could see them. Ashes, signifying that everything and everyone we know will end. A wilderness beyond our imagining. My life done. Yours ended. All of us gone. Our Lent brochure and our order of service for the 9 o'clock service both have this symbol of a barren tree on the front. Its leaves have all blown away, light as ashes. The tree limbs now are only simple lines. Nothing hides among the branches of this tree. Nothing can. There is nothing that can be covered by a fig leaf. In Lent, out in the wilderness, we really do feel naked. We might recoil, afraid to go there. I mean, who wants to be exposed, alone in a barren landscape, away from all that we know? Often we have no choice. We have no choice about whether the wilderness surrounds us. A beloved one dies or leaves us, and all that's left is wilderness. We might still live in the same address, at the same address with the same furniture, but now home is devoid of meaning, as if it's empty, an utter wilderness. We can be plunged into wilderness by a betrayal that we never saw coming, by cutting words that shred our confidence, by shocking hate-filled attitudes that we see on TV that unnerve us, and we find we're in an embittered, harsh country that we no longer recognize. Sometimes we have no choice about entering the wilderness. It suddenly springs up around us or hollows us out deep inside. Other times, we may choose the wilderness. During this season of Lent, some who are brave decide to venture into the wilderness so that they can wrestle with their demons. Some choose a time of reflection in this season, a time of darkness that they need to face, one that has haunted them for a long time, a time to unravel knots that they have felt in their stomachs, to unlock fetters that have hobbled them too long. Especially for those who have once before been met by God in the wilderness, often by those who pray or meditate or have been blessed by the gift of therapy, and for some who hear a whisper, even today, the whisper of the Spirit saying that the time for healing has come. Any of these brave people may seek out the wilderness, knowing that they are not yet the people they want to be. So Lent is one of those times where these brave souls, maybe you, walk into the wilderness or limp in or even feel like we're crawling in, hoping that God will find us there and heal us. There's a power for transformation in the wilderness, the sages of all the world's great religions tell us. And Jesus, Luke, who we heard today, implies that Jesus entered the wilderness willingly, conscious of the tough inner work that he had to do before he'd be ready to begin his ministry. The Gospel of Matthew, though, tells it differently. Matthew says Jesus was driven into the wilderness with no choice. I'm not sure. I know it can happen both ways. Either way, for Jesus and for us, time in the wilderness can be transforming for the good, even if it's awfully hard in the process. There's no sugarcoating it. It's death before resurrection. We always have to die before we rise. We always have to let go of what we've made into false gods or our own broken concept of God before we have space for the true God of love to enter into us and renew us. I wonder, what will this season of Lent, this season of wilderness mean for you? Historically, the church has suggested different ways that we can grow and learn during Lent. Some call it fasting or spiritual discipline. Some call it simplifying. Many talk of things that we give up. And whatever the terms are that you use, the notion is that we take this 6 weeks and set them aside to act differently from our usual routine. We intentionally change our pattern in some way. We choose to enter a wilderness. There are 2 ways we can do this wilderness journey. We can set something down, something that we've done, and we can pick up something new. You might carve out some space in your life by stopping the thing that you usually do, the setting down part. And then you might use that newfound space to lift up a new thing. You can use your newfound space of time or energy or maybe even money to pick up a new practice. In Lent, we're invited to do one of those things or another or both, put down or take up. It sounds simple, almost lame, but if done with Lenten intention, whatever the thing is, even small, can be a wilderness experience. Let's say your regular pattern is that you like to eat chocolate, like some of us. What if you fasted from that chocolate for 6 weeks? Or fasted from watching TV, or you stopped swearing, or you're going to drink just 1 glass of wine with dinner, or forgo the morning latte? They sound so little. But if you were to stop buying Starbucks on the way to work, I wager you'll miss it. That simple chocolate bar that you've forgone will cross your mind more than you imagine, and then the question is, what do you do? Because when you think back on that thing that you are missing, that you've put down, can you notice what has given you comfort? What have you relied on? And then in that that utter stillness of the wilderness, do you actually dig deeper so you can understand and learn about yourself and your inner workings? When you notice that you're craving the latte and really want to run out for some, what are the other feelings present? Are you lonely? Do you want something warm to wrap your hands around? Are you hoping to talk to those other people in the line? When you start debating, should I or shouldn't I just get 1 latte today, do you start berating yourself for some lack? Do you feel judgmental against those who can't be so disciplined? We learn a lot about ourselves just from these little things that we put down. Maybe we learn what we really need, way beyond that latte. Can you then ask God for it? And I wonder what would happen. I wonder, what will this wilderness be like for you this Lent? I sense that God yearns for us to figure these things out if we can, what it is that we really need. Because when we figure it out ourselves, then we may ask for it. God never will foist something on us. That wilderness of Lent is not God trying to punish us or to rob us of comfort, but another way in which we can discover the deepest and most lasting source of what your joy will be. We unwrap the picture of who we really are, whose we are, beloved child of God. We learn about our needs and how they can best be met, satisfied fully, not just shoved under the rug. When we enter the wilderness, because it's been forced upon us, it may be all we can do to survive for some time and to survey the wreckage to see what's left of us. In a smaller way, when we enter bravely in Lent, leaving behind our couch and TV, our scotch and cupboard of snacks, our routine Starbucks brew, then we also notice what we're left with, who is still there, who we are, who we're becoming, who we thought we'd be. The Buddhists call it mindfulness. Notice, be aware. Lent is a 6-week season of wilderness, of simplifying and stripping away what we don't need to find out what really matters, and it can be transforming. What will this season of wilderness mean for you? For some of you, you'll be drawn to that flip side of setting something down, and you will choose to pick something up, or maybe you'll do both. Without TV or that long line for the latte, it's easier to commit to picking up something new. Now maybe you can fit in the quiet prayer time for 10 minutes, the meditation that we don't really get to, that weekly Wednesday night service after work to ground us midweek, or maybe the Lenten book group on Luke. In Lent, we're reminded that when we set something down, that creates the space to open something new. The wilderness is quieter with fewer distractions. There are people who pick up another ancient practice of Lent, and that's called almsgiving. And so they, each day in Lent, put some funds in a jar, and at Easter contributed to a charity. One couple who loves to collect beautiful books and art and architecture did the math and found out that they spend about $50 a week on those books over the course of the year. So in Lent, they gave up the purchase of new books that they love. And they donated the $300 they'd saved to a local literacy program. Over time, they got so interested in the program, they began to volunteer there, giving the gift of reading and books to many more who didn't have it before. It's all part of that carving out something in Lent to allow God and God's love space enough to enter in. Who are you? Who do you want to be? What are you becoming? I wonder what this season of wilderness will mean for you. The Bible tells us that God always meets God's people in the wilderness and teaches them there and sustains them there. Remember, it was in the wilderness that the Israelites, led by Moses, become slowly transformed. They had started out as frightened slaves in Egypt, and they become an independent Hebrew people, able to reclaim their partnership with the holy, their covenant with God. You see, it was designed so that God would bless them so that they could be a blessing to others. The Israelite slaves begin the wilderness journey complaining at every turn. They nearly choose to return to bondage just so they can be fed. The taste of bread. Visions of flesh pots dance in their head. They begin fickle and resentful and untrusting and utterly unprepared to serve as leaders alongside Moses. The slaves insist he do everything, and they blame him if anything goes wrong. But through their journey in the wilderness, the Hebrews become a people who learn that they will have bread enough for the day, though it will appear in a form they've never seen before called manna. The Hebrews become a people who can raise up among themselves a group of leaders who then choose to govern themselves according to the 10 best ways to live that we call the commandments, built on these twin principles of loving God and loving other people. In the wilderness, the Hebrews become a people who will, with compassion, remember that they once were wanderers too. And so they welcome with care those outside their tribe who need help. It's not a perfect transformation of those people, and ours won't be either. But in the wilderness, God meets the people, and the people, by facing their fears, grow. Jesus does too, so will we. I think the best example of these wilderness journeys is one that a friend shared with me. It was not one she had chosen at all. It was because of a death in the family and a feeling completely left behind by God. But she chose in that time of wilderness to reach out and get help, to really face what was bothering her the most, and to talk it through with the help of a wonderful guide. Slowly, over time, when she finally could find words for her pain, she came to a new sense of what God wanted for her, not to rely only on herself or even on the silence of God, but to reach out to others and through them be healed. That was how God would act in her life. In that wilderness, she said she came to understand herself better and the pain of her family, and now she regularly chooses these disciplines. Rather than seeking to numb her pain or flee from them, she is someone who daily tries to think about all those who suffer in the world, and she is a voice of great compassion. She is remaking us here at King's Chapel and touches many lives. I know she'd never say so, but in the many seasons of Lent, she has faithfully walked into the wilderness to face darkness, to wrestle with it, and found God there. In the wilderness, says writer Frederick Buechner, Jesus spent 40 days asking himself the question of, what does it mean to be Jesus? During Lent, we get to ask ourselves what it means to be us. Not only who we are, but what we're becoming and what we're failing to become. Buechner says it can be pretty depressing business, all in all. But if sackcloth and ashes are at the start of it, something like Easter may be at the end. May it be so for you.